Greetings, fellow language learners and anybody else who is interested in this video. I have set myself a task for the next week. It is to learn as much Malagasy or Malagas. I'm not entirely sure of the pronunciation. I think the native pronunciation might be Malagas, but who knows. Anyway, I have set myself the task of learning as much as I can with a limited amount of time and energy. And then I will come back at the end of a week and see how much I have progressed in the language. The reason is that I have found my current method of language learning to be very productive. And so I'm interested in seeing how far I can go with a language that I don't actually know or speak. I have seen the language before, but I couldn't tell you any of the grammar. I couldn't tell you any of the words or anything like that. So it's something that I am essentially coming to for the first time, really. The reason why I chose this one over a different language is mostly because of feeling. I find that I have to be, I suppose, attracted to the language, not in the sense of I want to take it out for a nice meal and then wine and diner, but I need to find it pleasant to look at, listen to, etc. And also to be interesting from an interesting place. Madagascar is a very interesting place. And the story of the language coming all the way from Malaysia or Indonesia is really interesting. So all of that was a reason for deciding to learn Malagasy. But I was also thinking about other languages such as Maltese or maybe Egyptian Arabic, and I looked at Hopi, but they all had things that I wasn't entirely sure about. With Maltese, there's a lot of Italian and European words in there, which makes me slightly less interested in terms of learning a language that I know nothing about. Hopi was interesting, but I learnt that they are not typically keen on outsiders, such as myself, learning their language. So I kind of decided not to go with that because I didn't really want to transgress or do anything that would make the native people feel upset. I looked at some South American languages because for all of the languages that I'm learning, South America is probably the only continent that I'm not learning a language from. And I am just not finding anything that is clicking yet. Eventually, I'm sure I'll find something, but I'm just not finding that special sauce. I don't know what special sauce is, but still. Now, don't take any of these things as criticisms. They're not. It's based upon what I find myself naturally interested in. But I am just one individual in amongst 7 billion or whatever it is. So it's not a criticism of people's languages. It's just what I find personally interesting. There are lots of languages out there, and there's a lot of languages that I'm not personally interested in learning, but it doesn't devalue them in the slightest. For example, European languages, a lot of them I'm just not that interested. But a lot of people are interested in learning European languages such as French and Spanish, etc. And if they enjoy that, that's absolutely fine. And those languages are beautiful in their own right. It's just that personally, I'm more interested in different languages. So this is my challenge anyway. For the next week, I'm going to see how much I can learn of Malagasy. And then at the end of the week's challenge, I will be testing myself and I'll record it and see how much I can remember from the word list and sentence list. And I'll even see if I can make my own sentences, etc. Now, the only method I'm going to be using for studying is a slight reading of an old grammar book, because that's what came up. So I just went with that one, even if the language is a little bit ancient, that's fine. And I'm going to be looking through that to find sentences and to get an idea of what the pronunciation is and to just make sure that I'm getting the grammar correct if I can. Though it doesn't matter if I screw it up a little bit, as long as I'm taking it in, remembering it, and able to produce language at the end of the week. And secondly, the method for study will be just me with my tablet, and I will have the words in English on one side of my tablet. On the other side, I will have them in Malagasy and English. And then what I'm going to do, once I have gone through the list of words and sentences that I am doing in that day, and it'll be maybe just like 20 minutes a day, I will then cover them up and I will rely just on my memory and the English words. If I forget, it's okay, I'll go back and look at them, but this is how I've been studying recently. So I'm going to see how well I can do by essentially studying 20 minutes a day, playing a video game, and reciting words, essentially. If I find that I can make a lot of different sentences and I can talk about different things, that would be really, really good. Because I've been trying to find methods of study that can break through some of the problems that I have, as well as the fact that study for me doesn't come easily, especially when it's things like flashcards, etc. And the hope is that I can potentially help others with learning, because I'm an English teacher. And one of the problems I find is that people are not learning correctly. And so I focus a lot of my lessons on how to learn rather than teaching, which sounds like an odd thing to be doing as an English teacher, but there's a logic to it. The problem is that a lot of people will come to lessons and they'll say, sit down in front of me. And then it's just kind of like, okay, now give me my lesson. But then they'll go home and they don't review this. They don't really keep any of their notes or anything. They just go home, they come back, and it's the same thing the next week and the next week and the next week. And that is so inefficient for learning. But if I can tell someone, okay, I'll give you this list of words here and I'll give you these sentences, do this. For example, play video games and then describe what you're doing in the video game in English. That is far more productive, in my opinion. But I also give them other methods that have been talked about online, flashcards, memory palace techniques, all sorts of different methods. Anything that gets them out of this idea that I have to drill the language into their heads, because it doesn't work like that. Language learning doesn't work like that, not from my experience. And I'm someone who has learnt Japanese to N1 level, and I live in Japan, so I have that experience. I talk to people in Japanese every day. I also speak Scottish Gaelic with my son, and I'm also, on top of that, learning Nahuatl, and I'm learning Coptic, and I am learning, what else am I learning? Woiwurrung, Bunwurrung. I don't really know. They're basically the same language, really. And I am learning Pladuch, which is something I don't talk a lot about, just because I don't have much confidence in my pronunciation. And I'm learning Chinese as well. Is there anything? And I'm learning a constructed language, just because why not? Why not test myself? I like to give myself little goals. Like, one of my goals is to learn a language from every continent. Another one of my goals is to create and then learn my own constructed language. So if there are any things that you're interested in hearing about or whatever, please feel free to leave a comment. That would be lovely. If you're interested in my silly constructed language, I'd be happy to talk about it at length for hours. And no, I'm kidding, not really. But if you're interested in any of the languages that I'm learning, I'm trying to remember. I forgot Ainu. I'm sorry, Ainu. I'm also learning Ainu. That doesn't fit into the paradigm of my one language per continent thing, but I'm learning it kind of because I want to support Ainu people being in Japan. And like the amount of hate I've seen from certain people in Japan against Ainu people. Like, there's this fellow who shows up on this right-wing program, and he has a YouTube channel where he basically sits there and denies the indigenous nature of Ainu people. And he's allowed to go on TV and, be famous. And it's just disgusting to me. It really makes me quite sick, to be honest. Something I might do a video on in the future, but it's for reasons like that that I want to support Ainu people, especially because it kind of reminds me of Scottish Gaelic in a way. And that's part of my heritage, even though I was never raised learning the language. And I don't really like to say, oh, I have Scottish heritage, so I'm Scottish, so blah, 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 blah. I don't really get into that sort of stuff. But for me, there was that kind of connection because my grandmother's family comes from Perthshire, and her maiden name is Murray, Morach. And so there is that connection for me because Perthshire Gaelic is or was the language of the Murrays. So I don't know. For me, that's part of it. The other part is that I lived near there, so that also played a part. And I absolutely adore Perthshire, especially Blal and that area. It was really beautiful. And I don't know. For me, Scotland holds a real special place. I lived there for like almost 4 years, I think. Absolutely love Scotland. Anyway, different story for a different time. But that's the reason why I'm learning Ainu. Oh God, I've done it again. I've gone off on a tangent. Anyway, thank you very much for watching the video, and everybody be at peace. Not in a dead way. Bye.